This chair is one that I rebuilt. It was in very bad condition. It's from the mid-19th century, about 1860. It's a desk chair and was broken up. It has a Acme screw thread. I'll show you. When you turn it, you've probably seen these kind of chairs. When you turn it, it goes up and down. The Acme thread, the metal thread, was completely worn out, didn't hold, and every time you tried to sit into it, it wobbled back and forth and fell down. These wooden parts were all broken. I hadn't replaced, but I fixed most of them, all of them. And what kept me from using this chair after I fixed it was I didn't know who I could get to cane it to replace this webbing. And a few months ago I found a man, 80, I think he's 80, said he was 82 years old, who does this work. And he did an absolutely spectacular job on it. He charged very little money, 60 European cents per hole. There are 100 holes around the edge, so I paid about 60 euros to have him do that, and maybe that's $80 or something. It seemed like way too much work for that amount of money. And I sent him another 20 euros, or I think 20 or 30 euros, in gratitude for him doing such a beautiful job on it. I'm very pleased with this chair. It looks very nice, and it is actually quite comfortable. It's not going to stay here in our living room. It's going to go upstairs into the library, and we'll sit in front of the big 19th century desk we have. But I'm going to sit in this chair today. I'll go back just a little bit further here, I think. So that ought to be okay. And I'm going to tell you a story. It's not a story about cars. I know that's what interests a lot of people who watch my channel, but it's an unusual story in any way. It's an absolutely true story, and I can tell you that for certain, because it happened to me. Oh, yeah. It happened to me, and although it happened 34 years ago, I can remember it very, very clearly. I can remember everything that happened. I can remember the faces on the people that took part in this particular play that I had. I'll introduce myself first. Most people that watch this channel know me from now, but back then I was a young scientist in my early 30s. It was 1980. No, late 30s, I'm sorry. And I had become successful. I had probably reached the highest point in my career as a scientist. And I had worked 12 years previous to that time on brain research at the Max Planck Institute for Biological Cybernetics in Tübingen, Germany. Quite a prestigious institute. And I didn't stay there any longer than that. I wanted to change fields. I felt I had something to offer in the field of cancer research, and so I joined a group that worked on virology, actually on viruses, but our main interest was viruses that cause cancer in animals. These were to serve as models, of course, for human cancers. I didn't work with human patients. I only worked with cells, not even animals, but cells from animals, mostly from mice and rats and chickens. These animals all can get viruses that cause cancers. This is not necessarily true of many different kinds of cancers in humans, but these animal models serve to understand, my main interest at least was to understand the early events that occur in cells when they become cancerous. I had developed some new methods for visualizing cells. My main tool, if you will, was the electron microscope. I am or was an electron microscopist. I worked with the electron microscope over 50 years. I started my work on the electron microscope at Purdue University in Indiana in 1963 or 1964. I came to Germany and went to work at the Max Planck Institute on the electron microscope, and I used the electron microscope pretty much until the end of my career. I had developed in the 1970s, I had developed some new methods for contrasting cells. In the electron microscope, you have to use heavy metals, lead and osmium and uranium to create enough energy mass that you can have contrast in even in biological preparations, or especially in biological preparations. And as a consequence, I had published a paper that probably was the most important paper in my career about the early events that take place when a cell becomes transformed, malignant, cancerous. As a consequence of this paper, I guess, I was invited by the Royal Microscopic Society of London to take part in a conference on microscopy. It was 5 days, I believe, in Brighton, on the south coast of England. And I was chosen as the principal speaker for this event, and was also chairman of one of the sessions on electron microscopic imaging. And I got in, I put my suit on in the evening, and I went to the gala festivities that were planned for this. It was a Sunday evening, I believe. And interestingly enough, no one there paid any attention to me whatsoever. I was not welcomed. I didn't expect really to be personally welcomed, but I thought, since I was invited, the invited speaker, somebody would at least be there to say hello, but nobody did, and I found it utterly impossible to join in any conversations with anyone there. Everyone was speaking English, even an English that I could understand, and yet they were talking about things that absolutely didn't interest me, that I didn't understand, about people I never heard of. Nobody asked me anything about myself or where I came from or what I was doing. I tried to introduce myself to someone who paid no attention to me whatsoever, and so I quickly realized that the best thing that evening was to take advantage of the incredibly beautiful buffet that they had there. Fresh salmon, gorgeous salmon, and all kinds of seafoods, and wonderful, beautiful meats. And I filled up on all this gorgeous food. I went back to my room where that I had been assigned, and the room was actually, it was like a dormitory room. And I went to my room feeling quite full and pleased, and I went to sleep. The next morning I got up rather early because I had to give a lecture at, I think at 10 o'clock. And I got up about 6. I went through my lecture notes quickly. I had bought a little something to eat in the evening. Oh, that was an interesting thing too. In the evening, I walked past the McDonald's, and it was the first time I'd ever seen a Rolls Royce parked at a McDonald's with 6 people sitting in the Rolls Royce eating Big Macs, which I thought was rather peculiar, entertaining. Anyway, I went to my room and I slept, and the next morning I got up and like I said, I went through my lecture notes, and I took a shower, got my suit on, and all of a sudden my room door flew open, and an absolutely gorgeous young woman was standing there, red-faced and angry as she could be. "Where is that son of a bitch?" she said. I normally don't swear, and I certainly don't swear on videos, but I'm going to quote this young woman, most of her words. And I looked at her and I said, "I don't have any idea what you're talking. Don't hide that son of a bitch from me, that mother F," and so on and so forth. And I was stunned. I had no idea what was going on. "Where is John Balls?" she said. And I looked at her and I said, "Who? Don't give me that shit, you're hiding him here." And I, of course, had no idea what was going on. I had heard of a man named John Balls. I think he was some kind of a biologist, actually, and but I certainly didn't know him, and I had no idea where he was. And I had presumed then that must have been his room during semester. This was in the middle of the summer. She ran around the whole house there. No one else was there but me. And she was looking, obviously, for John Balls, who she didn't find. And she said, "All right, I'm going to find that bastard. But in the meantime, I'm going to take care of you too." And she slammed my door and locked it from the outside. She locked my room door from the outside. I could not open it. It had one of those sliding hasps. I don't know why it had a hasp on the outside, but it did. And she locked it. And I stood in my room completely thunderstruck, having no idea what was going on, but realizing that I was locked in my room, and I heard her leave the house. I heard her slam the house door, the front door. I had a key to the front door, but that didn't do me any good at that time because I couldn't get out there to open it up anyway. It was now about 9 o'clock, and at 10 o'clock I had my lecture. So there I was standing in my room in Brighton, in my suit, planning to give a plenary lecture within walking distance of where I was, thank goodness. But that didn't do me any good either because I couldn't get out, and the windows had bars on them. So I was not going to be getting out the window. I was basically in a prison cell. So I went to my window and I stood in the window looking out, and lo and behold, a couple, a man and woman, walked by on the sidewalk below. They looked to be, I'm guessing, I didn't know then and I never would find out, possibly Vietnamese. And I called down to them and I said, "Hello, hello, I need help." And they looked at me like they were terrified. I don't know whether they were illegally there or whether they just didn't speak a lot of English and were afraid to be in a foreign country or what. But they looked terrified, and I said, please don't go. Please don't go away. Please stay there, and I'll explain. Someone has locked me in my room here. I have a key to the house, which I will throw down to you. You can open the front door of the house and come in and open my door. And they looked at each other, and they looked at me, and I think the man wanted to walk away. I think he didn't want anything to do with this. But the woman seemed to realize my predicament and understand that I was really serious about this and not a threat to them. So she nodded her head, yes, they would do that. And so I threw the key down, which they took, went to the front door, opened the front door, came in the house, opened the room, my room, and I managed to get to my lecture. The lecture went very well. I was responsible for that session that day, which also went very well. I was chairman that day, and it was everything was fine. But I determined that the people were uninterested in me, and I was uninterested pretty much in what they were doing. So the next 4 days of my conference there, I spent at the Bluebell Railway, which is a narrow gauge railway near Brighton. I can only recommend it. It's fabulous. It's just beautiful. Of course, this is 34 years ago. I have no idea what it's like today. But that was my experience in Brighton. I flew back home. I left out one detail, however. A detail about this lovely young woman that had locked me in my room. She mentioned in passing that that son of a bitch was around when he got me pregnant, but now he was no longer there. Which pretty much explained why she was so angry. That's my story as a scientist and as an Anglophile. I love England, love Britain, and I don't like being locked in my room, but it was an experience I will never forget. And I thought maybe you all would enjoy hearing about it. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for subscribing. And thanks for putting up your wonderful videos that I enjoy watching. Have a nice day.